Shin Wolford had been a lonely office worker, living a monotonous life in modern-day Japan. A corporate slave with no personal life, he often chose to work overtime rather than join his coworkers for drinks. One night, after yet another long shift, he was walking home when he absent-mindedly reflected on the emptiness of his existence. Lost in thought, he failed to notice an oncoming truck, which struck him and ended his life, sending him into another world. He was reincarnated in a realm filled with magic, heroes, and demons. His earliest memory in this new world was of the aftermath of a demon attack, where he found himself as the sole survivor amidst the wreckage. Soon after, he was discovered by a powerful magician named Merlin, who took him in and adopted him. Shin grew up as Merlin's grandson and only student in an isolated house deep within the forest. Thanks to his knowledge and mindset from the modern world, Shin excelled in every discipline, from magic to swordsmanship. One day, when he was 8 years old, he ventured into the forest to hunt their dinner. Hiding in a bush, he used his wind magic to catch some unsuspecting chickens. He even managed to capture a wild boar. Satisfied with his hunt, he returned home to show his catches to Merlin, who was impressed. Merlin noted that using wind magic for hunting was the most effective method and decided to test Shin's magical abilities further. He asked Shin to light some wood on fire, which the boy did effortlessly by imagining the combustion process in his mind. Shin was secretly pleased that he didn't have to shout incantations to perform magic, as that would have been unbearable for him. At that moment, Melita Bowen, Shin's magic gear teacher, and Michael Cullen, his swordsmanship instructor, arrived at the cottage. Melita, a vigilant PDA-type figure, immediately scolded Shin for hunting the boar, claiming it was too dangerous for someone his age. Shin calmly explained that it wasn't particularly risky, as he had used the magic gear they had created together and had received excellent training from Michael. 2 years later, Merlin decided that Shin was ready to face stronger challenges and took him on a mission to hunt demons, believing that he needed to test his abilities against formidable opponents. Merlin explained to Shin that demons were born when ordinary animals failed to control the magical energy flowing through them. This loss of control caused them to go berserk, and though it was rare, humans could experience the same fate. He recounted that long ago, a human who had transformed into a demon had almost destroyed their nation, but Merlin himself had defeated the threat, earning the title of a national hero. Merlin then taught Shin a spell called Search Magic. He explained that it required spreading the mana from one's body in an extremely thin layer, which would react when it came into contact with other magical signatures, thereby revealing their location. He warned that it demanded considerable time and mastery over one's magical control to perform correctly. To Merlin's astonishment, Shin executed the spell instantly, using it to observe creatures and people from a distance. Suddenly, Shin sensed a sinister energy emanating from a particular direction. Roland confirmed that it was a demon, and they rushed toward the source of the dark aura. Without hesitation, Shin drew his sword and propelled himself toward the demon, his blade vibrating at an ultrasonic level while his jet boots allowed him to maneuver with extraordinary skill. In mere seconds, he had slain the demon. Merlin was left speechless, unable even to warn him of the danger in time. Shin asked whether he had done well, joking that he might have set a world record for the fastest demon hunt. Curious, Merlin inquired about the magic he had used to enchant his sword. Shin brushed off the question, unwilling to reveal that he retained memories from his past life, though Merlin and the others had already begun to suspect that he might have come from an alternate world. The following day, Shin underwent intense combat training under Michael. Afterward, Merlin took him to the mountains and revealed the truth. Shin was not his biological grandson. He had been found among the wreckage of a demon attack. When Shin asked about his real parents, Merlin explained that they had been injured beyond recognition. Shin, already having faint memories of that day, accepted the truth calmly. He told Merlin that he considered only Merlin, Michael, and Melinda his family, as they had raised him. These words moved Merlin to tears, and he wept openly like a little child. On Shin's 15th birthday, a celebration was held to mark his coming of age. Special guests attended the party, including a man Shin referred to as Uncle Disium, accompanied by his 2 guards, Christina and Sigrid. During the party, the guests asked Shin what he intended to do once he became an adult. He replied that he wanted to explore a nearby town, since he had never left the forest, and admitted that beyond that, he had no particular goal. Christina suggested that he could join the Royal Knights or become a demon hunter. Others continued offering advice, but Shin then admitted that he didn't even know how to use money, which left everyone stunned. It seemed that Merlin had taught him only magic and nothing else, though the old sage believed that somehow, Shin would figure it out. Later, Shin demonstrated his special spell called Gate, which allowed him to teleport to another location by manipulating wormhole principles. He transported everyone to a wilderness area for a magic test. Merlin cautioned that it would be dangerous for Shin to show off his latest spell in the forest and instructed everyone to brace themselves. He then told Shin to demonstrate. Shin began by imagining the fire of a combustible gas and adding more oxygen than usual, producing a striking blue flame that astonished everyone, but that was only the beginning. He then incorporated hydrogen, compressed the enormous fireball into a single point, and launched it at a nearby hill. The resulting explosion resembled a miniature nuclear detonation, which terrified the group, particularly Melinda. The display led them to conclude that it would be far too risky to let a prodigy like Shin wander freely. Dicium remarked that Shin's abilities could upset the balance of nations, drawing attention from every king. He suggested that Shin enroll in a magic academy, but Merlin objected, fearing that Shin would then become a national asset. It was revealed that Dicium was the king of the Earlshide Kingdom, though Shin had no idea of his true position. Christina was a royal guard, Sigrid served as the king's mage escort, and even Michael was a retired commander of the Royal Knights. Shin was shocked to realize the prominence of the people around him. Dicium then recounted how he had come to know Merlin. When he had been a student, a demonoid human had wreaked havoc on their nation, and he had almost been killed. Merlin and Melinda had arrived in time, and using Merlin's magic combined with Melinda's magic gear skills, they had defeated the demonoid together. Shin was stunned to learn that they had once fought on the same team, and even more so when he realized that Merlin and Melinda were actually married. Dicium concluded by telling Shin that attending the Magic Academy would allow him to learn how the world worked and make friends. He assured him that the academy operated strictly on merit, with no influence or privileges granted to nobility. Merlin realized that he could not keep Shin isolated with him forever and ultimately agreed to let him join the Magic Academy. A few days later, Shin set out for the capital alongside Merlin and Melinda to take the entrance exam. When they reached the city's checkpoint, the guard was astounded upon seeing the IDs of Merlin the Wise and Mita the Guru. News of their arrival spread quickly through the town, prompting them to hurry to their mansion, where they were greeted by a multitude of maids and butlers. Shin ventured into the market, enjoying the novelty of exploring the bustling city, but eventually became lost in a narrow alley. Suddenly, he heard the screams of a girl being harassed by 3 adventurers. Disgusted by their behavior, Shin stepped in. One of the men tried to strike him, but he was far too slow. Shin easily dodged the attack, slammed the man to the ground, and knocked down the second with a swift kick. The third man drew a dagger and lunged at him, but Shin intercepted it with his hand and knocked the man unconscious with a single punch. Afterward, one of the girls asked if he had been hurt, but Shin reassured her that he was fine. Her friend also came forward to thank him, and Shin instantly felt a connection with her. At a nearby cafe, the girls introduced themselves as Maria and Sicilian. He learned that they were also taking the Magic Academy entrance exam, and they quickly became friends. Maria, a devoted fan of the heroes, especially Melita, excitedly rambled about them and mentioned that their son would be joining the academy as well. Uncomfortable at the revelation and wishing to keep his identity hidden, Shin quietly paid for their drinks before taking his leave. On the day of the exam, Shin navigated the notice board when a rude noble attempted to grab him by the shoulder. In self-defense, Shin twisted the boy's arm, prompting the noble, Kurt Resper, to angrily threaten him while boasting about his family's status. Fortunately, Crown Prince August appeared, reminding Kurt of the penalties for abusing noble influence at the academy, effectively putting him in his place. Kurt walked away, unwilling to start a feud with the royal family. Shin was shocked to discover that August was the son of King Dicium. Since he regarded Dicium as an uncle, Shin casually referred to August as his cousin, prompting the Crown Prince to laugh at his nonchalant address, though he seemed unbothered. They proceeded to take the written portion of the exam and later moved on to the practical test. Shin was eager to see other mages demonstrate their skills, but quickly became dismayed. A boy began chanting to conjure a small flame, and while the crowd was impressed, Shin found the display underwhelming. The next candidate performed no better, and when Magner demonstrated his magic, Shin could only watch, disappointed at the mediocrity compared to his own abilities. When it was Shin's turn for the practical exam, the instructor reminded him to keep his powers under control, mentioning that she had received a heads-up from the king. Shin deliberately reduced his power to a minimum, but even then, he managed to destroy the room. When the results were announced, both Shin and August had passed. They went to collect their uniforms, and the receptionist explained that the uniforms had been enchanted with defensive magic and warned them not to attempt their own enchantments. Shin asked if Melita could enchant his uniform instead, and she agreed. She also informed him that, as the top scorer of the entrance exam, he would be required to give a speech at the entrance ceremony. Shin immediately tried to pass the duty to August, but August skillfully reminded him of the rule barring anyone from using their privileges to evade obligations. That night, Shin decided to overwrite the school's enchantment with a special pen of his own creation. He invented an enchantment that not only provided defense, but also enabled auto-healing and converted magic into kinetic energy. Thrilled with his accomplishment, he shouted in excitement, inadvertently drawing Melita's attention. Shocked, she made Shin promise the next day never to reveal that he had enchanted his own uniform. At the entrance ceremony, when Shin's name was called for his speech, the girls realized who he truly was, the hero's child they had been gossiping about. Shin delivered his speech calmly, while Kurt fumed with anger and hatred. Shin, August, and another distinguished student were placed in the S-rank class. After homeroom, Sicilian confided in Shin that she was being pressured by a man whose family outranked hers. Shin was concerned, only to discover that the man in question was Kurt. When Kurt tried to forcefully seize Sicilian, Shin intervened, revealing that they were engaged. Though he considered stepping back, he saw Sicilian trembling in fear and promised to protect her. She insisted that she had never agreed to the engagement and demanded that he stop forcing the matter. Shin reminded her that his father could punish her family for defiance, but before the situation escalated further, August intervened. Having overheard the threats, he promised to report the incident to the king, successfully forcing Kurt to retreat. Afterwards, August teased Shin for showing off in front of Sicilian. Concerned that Kurt might attempt something again, Shin decided to invite his friends to his home. Maria eagerly agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to meet her idol. August decided to accompany them as well, accompanied by his escorts, Julius and Thor. At home, Shin introduced each of his friends to his grandparents. He then explained Sicilian's situation and asked for permission to overwrite the enchantment on her uniform. Mita, observing the situation, asked Sicilian if she was worthy of the commitment Shin planned to make on her behalf. Although Shin did not think much of it at first, Melita explained that once he enchanted Sicilian's uniform, it would effectively become a national treasure, capable of selling for an incredible sum. Sicilian began to sob, confessing that she had been wrong to take advantage of Shin's kindness as a stranger. She initially decided to decline his help and leave, but Mita intervened. She praised Sicilian's honesty and permitted Shin to re-enchant her uniform. The king also instructed everyone present to keep the enchantment a secret, warning that members of the military would surely covet it. In the end, Shin ended up enchanting the uniforms of everyone else except Maria, who declined, not wanting the burden of possessing a national treasure. The next day, Shin used his search magic to ensure Sicilian's safety as he walked her to school. She appreciated his protection, but the early morning display of affection did not go unnoticed by Maria, who found it embarrassing. At school, a yellow-haired girl arrived just in time for class, explaining that she had been too excited about her first day to sleep the previous night. Shin, hearing this, wondered aloud why the world considered a 15-year-old an adult. When the teacher arrived, he immediately led the class on a tour of the school, explaining the various clubs available for magic practice, potion making, and even bodybuilding. He strongly encouraged the students to join one. Julius expressed admiration for the bodybuilding club but admitted he could not join, though August allowed him to, sensing it would be a rare opportunity for Julius to be free from his escorts. When asked what club Shin would like to join, he admitted he had no idea. August suggested that he form his own club, and the teacher supported the idea. The classmates quickly agreed, but Thor raised an important question about the club's purpose. Alice suggested that Shin could educate them about the heroes, but the teacher pointed out that a fan club for the heroes already existed. They ultimately decided to focus on learning advanced magic with Shin's guidance and named their group the Ultimate Magic Study Group. The following day, the students discovered that Kurt had been grounded. When Shin asked why Kurt had been so aggressive, they explained that he had not always been that way. His behavior changed after he began frequenting a laboratory owned by Mr. Strum. Mr. Strum, their middle school magic teacher, had an eye for talent, but everyone except Kurt had avoided him due to his shady demeanor. Sicilian appeared slightly disappointed, realizing that with Kurt no longer posing a threat, she no longer needed Shin to escort her to school as her Prince Charming. Still, she was thrilled to learn that Shin intended to continue walking her every day, which made her blush. Shin explained that he could usually detect ill intent with his search magic, leaving everyone surprised that such a thing was even possible.
Shin explained that the magic power of demons was sinister, abnormal, and overwhelmingly destructive, and that evil people emitted a similar aura. This prompted Lin to ask if he had ever hunted a demon before. Shin nodded, leaving everyone shocked, and even more astonished when they learned that he had killed a demonized bear on his own at the age of 10. Just outside the cafeteria, Shin sensed a demonic presence. It turned out to be Kurt, who approached them and immediately attacked with flame magic. Shin's barrier barely held, so he instructed the group to activate their uniform enchantments using mana. His hands were burned from the intensity of the heat, but his auto-healing enchantment kicked in, providing some relief. Realizing that Kurt was intent on killing them, the group prepared for combat. Kurt continued to exude a negative aura as he gradually transformed into a demon. Shin immediately told August to escort the others to safety while he held Kurt off. August was initially angry, believing that Shin underestimated their combat abilities, but Shin insisted it was for their own protection. Understanding Shin's reasoning, August led the others to safety. With no distractions, Shin activated his blue flames and prepared for battle. Kurt attacked with explosive force, but Shin skillfully evaded using his gear. He attempted to slow Kurt down, only to discover that the demonized boy's tiny flames caused far more damage than anticipated. Kurt regained his footing and began cursing at Shin, astonishing him further. Demonoids were not supposed to be capable of speech or reasoning. Kurt continued his relentless assault, but Shin stayed just out of reach, taking flight to avoid his attacks. He then unleashed lightning magic, which inflicted some damage but failed to stop Kurt, who continued his rampage. Shin frantically searched for a way to save the student before his powers escalated further. Soon, Kurt's magic accumulated at an alarming rate, and he began to self-destruct. Realizing that the resulting blast could destroy the school, Shin drew his ultrasonic blade and dashed toward him, evading the attacks before finally slaying him. Shin fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the realization that he had just killed a person. When his friends arrived, they were amazed that he had emerged victorious against a demon. Meanwhile, Shut, the person responsible for turning Kurt, his own mentee, into a demon, now had his sights set on Shin. Shin stared blankly out the window, contemplating the situation. When August arrived, he explained the absurd circumstances surrounding Kurt's transformation. He agreed that Kurt had not possessed sufficient magical knowledge to accidentally cast a spell that could turn him into a demon, confirming the gravity of the situation. Shin deduced that Kurt's transformation might have been artificially induced, since he had retained his senses, something a normal demon would not have done. This led him to conclude that Kurt had likely been used for human experimentation. Later that day, they returned home to find the king and his aide waiting for Shin. The king conferred upon him a first merit honor for averting the recent crisis. Shin was surprised, but Merlin confronted Dicium, who quickly explained that the incident had already become public knowledge, and that withholding recognition from a hero would anger the populace. Dicium reassured Merlin that he would keep Shin out of political matters, leaving Merlin with no choice but to agree. The next day, Shin became the talk of the town, making walking around rather uncomfortable. All the girls had taken notice of him, though Cecilian's presence made them assume he was already taken. Meanwhile, at school, students flocked to join Shin's newly formed club. Concerned about the number of participants, the teacher decided to set a minimum requirement: the ability to use other-dimensional storage space. In the end, only 2 students passed: Mark Bean, the son of a blacksmith, and Olivia Stone, his childhood friend whose family owned a diner. Alice and the other girls were already big fans of the diner, and Olivia promised to reserve a table for them. Shin revealed that he wanted a custom weapon, but Mark explained that he could barely forge a knife at the moment, so Shin would have to wait. Shin elaborated that while he used a regular sword enchanted to vibrate at ultrasonic speed to kill demons, its thin structure made it prone to breaking, and he wanted to make some adjustments. Yuri, a classmate and enchanter, remarked on Shin's extraordinary talent, and he encouraged her, volunteering to introduce her to Melita. She accepted the offer eagerly. Meanwhile, Stiffram was brought in for questioning by the Order of Knights. Surrounded and unable to prove his innocence, he eventually dropped his act, revealing his villainous nature. He confessed to conducting human experiments and stated that, now that they were complete, he was ready to escape. The group soon stumbled upon a battle scene with Strum at its center. As he began confessing to demonizing Kurt, Shin dashed at him, combining sword strikes with flame magic. Strum managed to block and evade the attacks, frustrating Shin's efforts. Using earth magic, Strum lifted Shin into the air, placing him in a nearly inescapable position. However, Strum's advantage was mitigated by his ability to use floating magic.
Shin unexpectedly propelled himself towards Strum using his gear and landed a precise strike. He followed up with intensely hot flames, forcing Strum to retaliate with a powerful surge of magic. During the clash, Strum's glasses were shattered, revealing to everyone that he was a demon with complete control over his reason and intellect. Boasting arrogantly, Strum claimed he had reached a level where humans were nothing more than playthings. Enraged, Shin launched an impulsive attack. Strum appeared to evade it, but in reality, he was buying time to concentrate sunlight for a devastating spell. Shin activated his own counterspell, sending dozens of beams of concentrated sunlight piercing through the roof and striking Strum, resulting in a massive explosion. When the smoke cleared, Shin saw that the surrounding area had been transformed into glass due to the intense heat. Despite the apparent destruction, Shin harbored doubts about whether Strum had truly been defeated. The head court magician, Rupert Alrum, and the knight commander, Dominic Gastra, later thanked Shin for his assistance. They inquired about how he had created such a spell, but even when Shin began explaining the concept, Rupert struggled to keep up. The next day, Shin and his friends visited the blacksmith shop run by Mark's family. Everyone was cheerful, but Shin remained somber, convinced that Strum had survived. August was surprised to hear this, and Shin explained that the concentrated sunlight had created glass craters on the floor without any true explosion. He suspected that the apparent massive blast had been a ruse by Strum to distract them and escape safely. August agreed that Shin's theory made sense. He then instructed Shin to order whatever he wanted at the smithy, assuring him that the royal family would cover the cost, emphasizing that since Shin was the only one capable of confronting Strum, he needed the best possible gear. Upon arriving at the blacksmith shop, Mark and Olivia greeted them warmly. The girls immediately took Olivia away for a private chat while the boys entered the workshop. Mark's father was initially displeased at the number of people entering his workshop, but when August introduced himself, he and all his workers immediately fell to their knees. August then introduced Shin, causing Mark's father to become even more excited upon learning that he was the grandson of the great sage and the new hero. Eager to craft a weapon for such a distinguished figure, he listened attentively as Shin explained the details of the order. After leaving the smithy, they found that Sicilian and Maria had taken Olivia away for some girl talk. Shin then glanced at the workshop and asked if they sold other items as well. Mark explained that the second floor of the shop offered housewares, while the third floor featured accessories.
Shin immediately asked Sicilian if she would like to buy some accessories. She blushed, thinking he intended to buy a ring for her, but he merely wanted to purchase an accessory he could enchant with defensive magic for her protection, which left her slightly disappointed. Feeling uncomfortable with her reaction and the judging looks from his friends, Shin promptly took Sicilian to browse the accessories. She asked him to choose one for her, and he selected an expensive ring. He placed it on her middle finger and held her hand, explaining that the ring would keep her safe in his place. A few days later, Shin was dressed for his awards ceremony. He was presented to the royal court and received applause from the high-ranking nobles. The king conferred the medal upon him and then publicly announced that Shin must not be used for military or political purposes. He warned that violating this agreement would result in Merlin and his family leaving the nation. The next day, Shin surprised everyone by arriving at school using his gate magic. He explained that he had to escape the mob of fans at his house. Curious, Lin asked him about the mechanics of the spell, and Shin explained that gate worked by reducing the distance between two locations rather than performing ordinary teleportation. She did not fully understand, so he reassured her, joking that even Merlin himself could not fully grasp the concept. Shin then suggested that the group begin leveling up, noting that the capital was becoming increasingly unsafe. He explained that they first needed to measure the amount of magic each of them could control. Contrary to the usual belief that higher-level spells required complex incantations, he emphasized that the true key was the amount of magic acting as the fuel for the spells. He began by examining Maria's barrier, which was surprisingly thin. Next, he asked Sicilian to create a barrier using the enchanted ring he had given her. When she did, the barrier was noticeably thicker and firmer, reflecting the precise control Shin had imbued into the enchantment. He then demonstrated the extent of his own magical control, generating a density so strong that nearly everyone in the group struggled to breathe. Shin warned them that until they could reach this level of control, they would have no chance of surviving a battle against demons. Later, he invited the group to his home, where his friends were thrilled to meet the legendary sage and the guru. Shin explained to his grandparents that another crowd had gathered outside the school gates, and Merlin laughed, telling him that it was the price of being a celebrity. Shin also mentioned that he was now training his friends through his study club. Curious students asked Merlin if he had taught Shin the unusual magic he used, and Merlin clarified that he had only taught him the basics. Shin had reinvented the spells himself.
Merlin explained that, normally, magicians focused on visualizing the result of their spells, but Shin concentrated on the process itself. He asked the students if they understood how fire burns, but none of them had any knowledge of combustion. Merlin admitted that he himself did not fully understand it either, but he knew that his grandson asked such curious questions of himself, which was exactly how he improved his magic. Suddenly, Merlin surprised Shin by using gate magic. The old sage laughed, admitting that while it had initially been difficult to comprehend, he had finally understood the underlying principles and succeeded in mastering the spell. He told the students that Shin was not the only one capable of using this magic. Anyone who understood the principles and could accurately visualize the process could perform similar feats. This revelation gave the students a spark of confidence. Lin, motivated by this, practiced diligently and the next day arrived at school covered in bruises with scorched hair. When Shin asked what had happened, she explained that she had been attempting to control her magic, but it had gotten out of hand, resulting in a small explosion. Though concerned, Shin was reassured when Lin added that this was nothing new for her, as her father was the court magician. Later, Shin and his friends visited Mark's smithy, where the first prototype of his special swords was ready. The design allowed a blade to be ejected from the hilt simply by pulling a trigger, with a new blade immediately inserted. Tony, the person who had originally suggested the idea to Shin, was impressed with its performance, as was August. August asked Shin if he would mind if the special swords were used in the army, clarifying that he was not referring to the ultrasonic blade, but the replaceable blade sword. He explained that this design could help keep the military budget manageable while enhancing their strength, something likely to be needed soon, given the potential for war with the neighboring Bluffia Empire. The other students were aware of the tensions as well and speculated that Shin might be enlisted if the conflict escalated. August reassured them, telling Shin not to worry and promising that the country would honor its commitment to keep him out of the war. However, Shin responded that even if he were not drafted, he could not stand idly by while his friends were in danger and would join the battle to protect them. Meanwhile, Shin had survived and had already set his plans into motion. Using his minions, he sought to provoke the Emperor of the Bluffia Empire into declaring war on the Earlshide Kingdom, claiming that the kingdom was already struggling against demon threats.
When the forces of the Bluffia Empire attacked the Earlshide Kingdom, they were met with an unexpected level of preparedness. The Bluffia army suffered a devastating defeat, and shortly after, the emperor received news that demons had been sighted in his capital. He immediately ordered a retreat, but by the time he reached the city, it had already been ravaged by the demons under Strum's command. Entering the throne room, the emperor found Strum waiting. Strum declared that he intended to kill the emperor personally. Before the emperor could summon aid, Strum bound him with magic and obliterated him. Soon after, Lord Gastra and Rupert arrived in the capital, intending to confront the emperor once and for all. Instead, they were met by a party led by Strum and his demon army. Forced to retreat, they reported their findings to the king, who realized that the kingdom now faced a far greater threat than a simple war. The Earlshire Kingdom was placed on high alert, and even the school began efforts to improve everyone's combat abilities. As a result, joint training exercises with the Order of Knights were announced. The class immediately sank into a state of dread, as magicians and knights traditionally did not get along. Knights referred to magicians as sprouts due to their perceived weakness, while magicians called knights muscle brains because of their reliance on physical strength. Shin attempted to explain the necessity of mutual respect and cooperation, but he was met with resistance. When he revealed that he had been trained by Michael, the renowned sword saint, everyone's attitude shifted dramatically, though ultimately he failed to convince them to work harmoniously with the knights. During the joint exercise, the students were tasked with exterminating demons in the forest. They gathered outside the city gates, and Shin was placed in a team with August, Sicilian, and Maria. As soon as the magicians arrived, they began belittling the rumored hero Shin, assuming he would slow them down. While traveling in the cart, the students introduced themselves, and Shin asked whether they had ever fought a demon before. The question was immediately taken as an insult. He warned them that failing to cooperate would mean certain death, but the knights arrogantly boasted about their capabilities. When Avis intervened, the knights pretended to agree to work together, though Shin remained skeptical. He instructed the students not to defeat any demons prematurely, so the knights would have sufficient opportunity to showcase their skills and learn how ineffective they were without magicians supporting them. Upon arriving at the designated training area, the students were met by their supervisors, Christina and Siegfried. Shin pleaded with the group not to bicker, but it quickly became clear that his efforts were in vain. Soon, Maria and the female knights began teasing Siegfried, while the other knights reciprocated by targeting Christina. Shin was surprised to learn how much of a fan following his group had, but August explained that it was natural. They were highly popular because they were strong enough to serve as the king's personal guards. August then reminded the supervisors of the prior agreement allowing the knights to fight alone initially, and the supervisors approved, recognizing that it would help the knights understand their limits early on. The knights remained on high alert despite Shin noting that no demons were in the immediate area. When a demon finally appeared, Siegfried instructed them to prepare for battle. A raging demon boar charged forward, and Shin could only think about how delicious it would have been if it weren't demonized. The knights held their ground, but their attacks were slow and feeble. The boar was too fast. It broke through their formation and circled back to finish them off. At that moment, Shin swooped in with his sword and beheaded the creature with a single slash. The knights were scolded severely, and Christina made sure they understood just how weak they had been. Sicilian then healed their wounds, prompting the group to agree to cooperate. The knights treated Sicilian like a goddess, which annoyed not only Shin but also the female knight, who had never been treated as delicately. Just then, some knights ran in to report that over 100 demons were approaching. Shin volunteered to handle them alone, instructing the others to stay out of his way so he could prepare his devastating atomic bomb spell. The group was horrified when they saw a catastrophe-class demon leading the charge, but Shin unleashed a single blast that leveled the forest and every obstacle in his path. Witnessing his magic left everyone stunned. The female knight apologized for her previous rudeness, even apologizing to Sicilian, assuming they were a couple. Both girls blushed, making their feelings obvious to everyone nearby. Following this, the group began working more effectively as a team. When they encountered a bear demon, the knights formed the front line while the magicians attacked it with fireballs. The bear, distracted and agitated by the flames, allowed the knights to strike. Shin used a magic barrier to protect them from the bear's attacks, and the knights coordinated their assault to defeat it. Sicilian then healed the knights, who continued to fawn over her despite knowing she belonged to another man. Siegfried and Christina were impressed by the group's improved teamwork. Siegfried asked Shin what had caused such rapid improvement, given that the group's power was now comparable to that of court magicians. Shin explained that they had formed a study group to practice magic, using the methods he had learned from Merlin, and that he had been teaching them how to properly visualize and control magic in combat. Siegfried expressed curiosity about Shin's study group and asked if he could learn under him as well. However, August immediately intervened, explaining that as a member of the military, learning Shin's magic would violate the promise made to Merlin. He warned that Shin's magic was so powerful that it could potentially destroy the world if it fell into the wrong hands. August even lectured Shin to be careful not to disseminate his magical knowledge further. Siegfried accepted the warning, but requested permission to at least practice the basics as taught by Merlin. August assured him that the fundamentals were simple. Practicing magic control daily would naturally make him stronger over time. Siegfried found this hard to believe. To demonstrate the effectiveness of daily practice, August called Sicilian and Maria to showcase their progress. He instructed them to create magic barriers using the techniques Shin had taught them. Both girls successfully formed barriers that were thick and sturdy, leaving Siegfried astonished. August explained that this level of skill was attainable through consistent magic control practice, while Maria admitted that their barriers were still far thinner than Shin's and laughed, saying they could never reach the level of the sage's grandson. Siegfried encouraged her to believe in herself, insisting that she was special. His words stirred something in Maria, who had always been perpetually single, lifting her spirits. Inspired, Siegfried announced that he too would dedicate himself to practicing magic control. Shin, observing all this, wondered how his other friends were faring in their respective groups. Elsewhere in the forest, Mark, Olivia, Tony, and Julius trained alongside some knights. One knight, still bitter over Tony leaving him in middle school to join the Magician Academy, displayed particular hostility. Suddenly, a wolf demon attacked, and the resentful knight charged forward alone. Despite the supervisor's warnings, other knights followed, only to be ambushed by more wolf demons. The knights found themselves in a precarious situation, but Tony and the magicians intervened, shooting the demons down from a distance. The supervisors were stunned to see that the demons had been completely destroyed, leaving only craters in the ground. Tony approached his former friend, who continued to give him the cold shoulder. His friends asked if there was another reason for the hostility, and Tony recalled that the knight had once had a crush on a girl who confessed to Tony instead, briefly dating him, an additional source of his resentment. In another group, Lynn, Alice, Yuri, and Thor were joined by knights who attempted to taunt them with misogynistic remarks. However, when attacked by a pack of small dog demons, the knights' ineffectiveness was exposed, revealing just how incompetent they were in battle.
The girls quickly grew impatient with their own weakness and took control of the situation, eliminating the demons with their magic. Lynn, however, lost control of her powers, causing a sudden explosion that inadvertently damaged her own party as well. Later, everyone regrouped at the city gate, and Shin noticed Lynn's team with singed hair, realizing they had struggled to control their abilities. He also observed the lingering tension between Tony and his former friend. Curious, the other students asked Shin about his side of the mission, and Maria teasingly remarked that Shin and Sicilian had been flirting throughout the operation. Both blushed at the comment, but Maria quickly moved on, noting that with Shin supporting them, their training had been remarkably successful. Taking advantage of the moment, August announced that everyone in Shin's study group, except for Shin himself, would be placed under national supervision upon graduation. He explained that they would form a special unit directly under his command, though other nations might attempt to recruit them in the future. Shin apologized to his friends for altering their lives so dramatically, but they reassured him that they were happy about it, excited to have guaranteed elite positions before even graduating. They eagerly asked Shin to teach them more, and he realized that in order for them to become a special unit capable of saving the world, they would need to grow far stronger. A few days later, Shin took the girls from his study group to the barren mountains to practice their magic. Their display of power was terrifying, prompting August to comment that it resembled a live exercise by the National Magic Division. Shin explained that he had chosen the location because he was familiar with it and knew no one would be there to observe them. After the training concluded, August addressed the group with new information about the demons. He warned that while the details remained classified, the students could no longer be considered ordinary citizens. Once the war against the demons began, they would play an integral role in the army and needed to know as much as possible about their enemies. August revealed that the Blesia Empire was currently suffering under a wave of demon attacks, with towns and villages destroyed and both nobles and commoners massacred. Despite this, the Earlshide Kingdom could not engage the demons without proper preparation, and the growing number of demons made the situation even more dire. Shin, certain that Strum was behind the attacks, explained to his friends that if they were to face him properly, they would need to take extraordinary measures. He announced plans to organize a rigorous training camp in the mountains, with both practical lessons and exercises. He instructed everyone to find a suitable place nearby where they could stay and relax between sessions.
After discussing all their ideas, Maria suggested that they go to Sicilian's home because her family owned a hot spring. Shin immediately agreed, liking the idea. Later, he informed his grandparents about the upcoming training camp, and they expressed their support. However, Melita questioned who would be supervising them. When Shin asked why supervision was necessary, she scolded him, insisting that teenage boys and girls could not be left alone under the same roof. Though she appeared old-fashioned, her true intention was to volunteer as their supervisor and enjoy some fun at the hot springs, with Merlin deciding to accompany her. The next morning, Merlin and Melita arrived at the school gate, where all the students were ready to depart for the training camp. They traveled in horse-drawn carriages equipped with special harnesses that provided natural air conditioning and reduced fatigue. Shin, unfamiliar with such technology, was surprised to learn that Melita had invented them. She basked in their praise as they noted that she had innovated magical gear for peace and prosperity rather than warfare. Soon, Shin sensed the presence of nearby demons, and his friends felt it as well. They encountered a group of merchants surrounded by mid-sized wolf monsters, and everyone wanted to take part in subduing them. To determine the order of participation, Shin drew chopsticks from a cup, and Lin won the first draw. She effortlessly blew away the entire pack of wolf demons with a powerful wind spell. Shin advised her that if she focused a little more on controlling her magic, she could release her spells faster. Afterwards, they arrived at the hot spring city of Cielo and reached Sicilian's mansion. The manager and servants warmly welcomed everyone, having already accepted Shin as Sicilian's future son-in-law. Later, they all relaxed in the hot springs, and Merlin expressed his gratitude to the boys for befriending Shin, as he had never had friends his own age before coming to the academy. Otis responded by thanking Merlin in return, saying he had never had a friend who treated him so informally until Shin. Others joined in, sharing how Shin had positively impacted their lives. The following morning, everyone began their magic control training under Merlin's supervision. He provided tailored advice to each student, adjusting his guidance according to their individual performance. As usual, Lin released more magic than she could control, causing another dangerous situation. This time, Merlin intervened, instructing her to stop and shielding everyone from the effects of her explosion. Following this, Melita gave the students a lecture on magic gear and chanting techniques, emphasizing proper use and control. Next, Shin took the group to the mountain range for their practical training. The students began casting spells without chanting, showcasing their growing abilities. Melita remarked that they were already strong enough to challenge the Department of Magic, but both Shin and Merlin believed they still had room for improvement. Shin knew that if they were to face an army of demons led by Strum, everyone, including himself, would need to become much stronger. However, his classmates were wary of the shockwave from Shin's new spell and immediately erected magic barriers to protect themselves. Shin first visualized a highly combustible gas to generate blue fireballs, which he then combined into a single massive fireball. He surrounded it with a tornado and directed it forward. Previously, Shin had used the spell as a wide-area attack, but this time he focused on controlling its trajectory, transforming it into a precise, devastating weapon. When he finally released the attack, it obliterated everything in its path. Although Shin was pleased that his new technique had succeeded, Melita struck him sharply with her fan, calling him a fool. She demanded to know why he needed a spell capable of destroying 3 hills in a row. Nervously, Shin admitted that he had not expected it to be so powerful, but Melita remained unsatisfied with his explanation. The other students were also terrified by the display, and none of them believed Shin when he tried to downplay the power of the spell. The class was dismissed for the day, and as everyone traveled home, August asked Shin to use the gate spell to transport him to the castle so he could receive updates on the war situation. Shin complied, and when they arrived, a moody blonde girl was waiting for the prince. August grew visibly nervous upon seeing her and explained to Shin that the girl was his fiancée, Ellie. She introduced herself politely to Shin before scolding August for going to the training camp and leaving her alone. At that moment, August's younger sister, May, also arrived and agreed wholeheartedly with Ellie's complaints. Although she did not miss her brother as much, she was upset that he had gone camping with Guru Melita, who was her idol. August teased May about her frustration, causing her to become even more annoyed.
When Ellie noticed Shin, she became flustered and introduced herself as a great fan of Melita, which Shin found endearing. August asked both girls what they were doing there, and they explained that they intended to accompany him to the training camp. He initially refused, deeming it far too dangerous and insisting that the king would never permit it. His father, however, immediately overruled him, instructing August to take both his fiancée and younger sister to the camp. August was dismayed, but Shin quietly snickered, anticipating the fun he would have teasing him later. Using the gate spell, Shin transported everyone to the hot spring city, and May was ecstatic to realize they had arrived in an entirely different city within seconds. August scolded her for getting carried away, and Shin offered her his hand, which she accepted. August instructed May to listen to everything Shin said and not to stray from him. Turning to Ellie, August warned her that while she could stay at the camp, there would be no one there to pamper her. Ellie replied that she did not mind, as her purpose was to ensure that nothing distracted August. Shin initially assumed that Ellie was jealous of the other girls at the camp, but she clarified that her concern was actually him. She admitted that every time she spent with August, he would talk about Shin, which unsettled her. Shin was immediately disgusted at the thought of Ellie imagining anything inappropriate between him and August. However, the prince reassured his fiancée, telling her that she was the only one for him. He explained that Shin was simply a male friend with whom he could freely joke around, and since this was a new experience, he sometimes got carried away. Ellie was moved by his words and decided to stop being angry at August. Later, they went to a restaurant to eat, and August mentioned that Shin already had a girlfriend, which made him nervous. August encouraged Shin to stop being timid and make his feelings for Sicilian clear, noting that it was obvious to everyone that the two were in love. Shin hesitated, asking what would happen if his observation turned out to be wrong and their relationship worsened. August countered, asking Shin whether he was happy with the way things were now and whether he planned to wait for a girl to confess to him first, calling him a coward. Shin was left lost in thought, his mind full of doubts, even after they returned to the mansion. Meanwhile, Ellie and May teased Sicilian, telling her that Shin had been thinking only of her on the way to the camp, and they noted how cute the two made a couple.
Both Sicilian and Shin blushed upon hearing the comments, and Shin hurriedly tried to quiet the two girls. Ellie and May then greeted the older couple, and May became flustered upon seeing Melita in person. Shin explained that May was a huge fan of hers. Melita approached May on her own, and found her quite adorable. Mita remarked that she wished Shin had been this charming as a child, but he had been a mischievous troublemaker who could never be left alone. Everyone laughed and expressed hope that their own children would not be as unruly as him. Shin felt a little dejected, but Sicilian interjected, saying she disagreed and was sure that their children would be wonderful. She immediately turned red at her own words, and everyone teased her for thinking so far ahead, causing her to flee in embarrassment. August told Shin that this clearly showed how much Sicilian liked him, and Shin had to admit that he agreed with him. Later that night, Shin went for a walk and found Sicilian sitting alone. He approached her, but neither knew what to say at first. After some awkward silence, Sicilian apologized for her thoughtless comment earlier, and Shin admitted that hearing it had made him somewhat happy. They began reminiscing about their first meeting, and Shin confessed that when he first saw her, it had felt as though lightning had struck his heart. Sicilian replied coyly that she had also thought he was very handsome. Encouraged by her words, Shin finally summoned the courage to profess his love to her. Sicilian cried tears of joy and confessed that she loved him as well. Shin asked her to become his girlfriend, and she readily agreed. They leaned in for a kiss, but their friends, who had been secretly watching, fell from their hiding spots at the last moment, preventing the kiss. Even his grandparents were present to witness the moment. Shin then proudly declared that he and Sicilian were now dating, and her manager emerged from the bushes to congratulate them. August also congratulated Shin, but reminded him not to let romance distract him from training. Shin questioned why August had orchestrated the situation, and August explained that it was a classic trope. In stories, men who delay confessing their feelings because of war rarely survive to do so. The next day, everyone arrived at the beach, and Shin reminded them that their purpose was training, not leisure. The exercise was a beach ball game modified for training purposes, with the additional rule that participants could use magic on the ball. Alice initiated the game by throwing the ball high into the air, then leaping after it using a physical reinforcement spell, striking it downward. During the volleyball training, Olivia received Alice's powerful strike without issue. Thor set up the ball for Tony, who spiked it using his wing magic. August lifted the ball with wind magic, and Lynn jumped to hit it with a flame spell. The flaming ball flew straight toward Yuri, who attempted to block it with a water shield but failed, conceding the first point to the opposing team. While everyone else grew increasingly competitive, Shin wondered aloud if mastering volleyball could be so easy. Suddenly, a stray fireball headed toward Ellie and May, but Merlin quickly intercepted it with a magic barrier, saving the girls. As Melita scolded the culprits, Merlin remarked that the game was an excellent way to practice magic control and instructed them to continue playing. After the game ended, everyone returned to the mansion at night. Shin learned that the group had all met August and Ellie when they were 5, during the traditional parties held for royal and noble children of that age. Conversations turned to childhood parties, love stories, and relationships, but Shin suddenly noticed something amiss and asked everyone to be quiet. Moments later, Melita entered the room, telling them to go to sleep early in preparation for training the next day. The students had already turned off the lights and hidden under the covers, almost escaping detection. However, Shin and Sicilian ended up in the same bed, and her involuntary reactions revealed their presence. Melita discovered them and scolded everyone severely. The following morning, Shin and Sicilian met in the hallway and blushed at the memory of the previous night. Shin suggested they quickly get breakfast to break the awkwardness. Before leaving, Sicilian requested that he meet her parents to formally declare their relationship. Shin agreed, but when he stood before her parents, he initially struggled to find the right words. He eventually gathered his courage and politely stated that he was dating their daughter and had come to seek their blessings. Shin had feared that Cecilian's parents would react negatively, but to his surprise, her father took his hands and thanked him for choosing their daughter. Shin was dumbfounded by this reaction. Cecilian's mother, however, asked her husband to calm down and addressed Shin directly. She explained that, as a noble family, a daughter could not date without a formal engagement and asked Shin if he was prepared to be engaged to Cecilian. Shin confidently affirmed that he was.
After Shin confirmed his engagement, both of Cecilian's parents accepted him as her boyfriend. Shortly afterward, the group returned to the mountains for training and found Tony and Thor continuously launching fireballs. Ellie was shocked at the intensity, but Shin reassured her that it was just a warm-up. Merlin approached Ellie and May, asking if they were interested in joining the training. Ellie declined, admitting that she had no talent for magic, but May eagerly accepted. Merlin began her lesson with basic magic control exercises, and it quickly became apparent that May possessed remarkable potential. Both Merlin and Melita praised her, which stirred jealousy among the other girls. Determined not to be outdone, Lynn focused intensely on her magic, but she once again overexerted herself and caused a minor explosion. Meanwhile, Shin decided to experiment with a new type of magic. His friends immediately reinforced their magic barriers, fearing that his experiment might be dangerous, but Shin reassured them that he was not creating offensive magic this time. He poured a massive amount of magic into a stone using his newly developed spell, and the rock began to levitate. Excitedly, Shin declared the experiment a success, leaving everyone else astonished. When asked to explain, Shin described it as anti-gravity or levitation magic. Although they did not fully understand the scientific terminology, everyone agreed that his achievement was extraordinary. Shin explained that the demonstration was only a preview and that the main experiment was yet to come. He cast the anti-gravity spell on himself, floated into the air, and used wind magic to maneuver around. Though he had not yet mastered full control, he laughed with delight, leaving the others speechless. He revealed that he had developed this form of floating magic as a countermeasure, inspired by Shram's own abilities. Later that evening, Shin informed his grandparents about his engagement to Cecilian. They were surprised by the sudden news, and Shin apologized for not telling them sooner. Cecilian attempted to defend him, taking the blame, but Melita and Merlin showed no objection. In fact, they admitted that they had expected the engagement to occur eventually. Before formalizing the engagement publicly, Melita requested a meeting with Cecilian's parents. During the visit, Merlin and Melita clarified that they had no blood ties with Shin. They felt it was important to inform Cecilian's parents of this, as they believed one of the reasons Cecilian's parents had agreed to the engagement was because of Shin's supposed familial connection. Cecilian's father expressed his disappointment in Merlin and Melita for doubting his family's judgment.
Cecilian's father explained that the reason they had agreed to the engagement was not because Shin was their grandson, but because he genuinely valued Cecilian and consistently sought to protect her. Shin and his grandparents were overjoyed to hear this and expressed their gratitude to Cecilian's parents. Shin also thanked his grandparents for raising him well, which moved them both to tears. A few days later, Shin presented new outfits to all the members of his group. The uniforms were enhanced with advanced defensive enchantments, camouflage features, and temperature control, elevating them beyond what could be considered a national treasure. He noted, however, that he had not applied any special enchantments to their boots, as using them improperly could be dangerous. August was the only one perceptive enough to understand that the upgraded uniforms were a preparation for the day's particularly dangerous training exercise. Upon hearing this, the group panicked. Shin calmly explained that today's session would involve real combat training against a catastrophe-class demon. Though no one felt confident about facing such a threat, Shin reassured them that they were already strong enough and that their new uniforms would prevent serious injury. May protested, insisting that she wanted to participate, but August forbade it, emphasizing the extreme danger of the training. When she continued to fuss, Shin devised a solution. He created a primitive telephone using paper cups and demon spider silk and tested it by communicating with May from another room. He instructed her to practice, using the device while the others were out training. Suddenly, Melita arrived at May's location. Upon seeing the contraption, she scolded Shin for inventing something so extraordinary yet unnecessary. Growing tired of her constant nagging, Shin hung the telephone over a statue and hurried off with his friends. Once in the forest, Cecilian used her sensory magic to locate the catastrophe-class demon. It was a demonized lion, which Shin described as slow but extremely powerful. Cecilian suggested using ranged attacks, and Shin patted her head in approval. The single members of the group were visibly displeased at the display of affection, but Shin quickly refocused everyone on the task at hand. Julius, Yuri, Mark, Cecilian, and Olivia were grouped together to confront the demon lion. August expressed concern, noting that they typically excelled in support roles, but Shin insisted they were capable of taking it down. When the lions spotted them, Shin ordered the group to prepare for battle. Everyone activated their magic, and at Shin's signal, they launched a coordinated multi-element assault. The attacks struck the demon lion from all sides, leaving it aware that it was at a severe disadvantage. A massive explosion shook the entire forest, and Shin realized that sending 5 people to fight a single catastrophe-class demon had been overkill, as all that remained was a crater where the demon had stood. He commented that if the supporting fighters could achieve such results, then the primary damage dealers in their group could likely defeat a demon of this level on their own. Accordingly, they set out to face other catastrophe-class demons individually, and each succeeded. Tony, in particular, had mastered the use of the ultrasonic blade from Shin, impressing everyone with his skill. Later that evening, Shin dressed formally for his engagement party. Sicilian came to his room to escort him, and he found himself unable to take his eyes off her. They became lost in each other's gaze until Sicilian's mother arrived, reminding them that the guests were waiting downstairs. The couple received a warm welcome from their friends and family, and even the king was present to witness and congratulate them. That night, Shin and Sicilian went out onto the balcony, where he produced an engagement ring from his pocket and formally proposed. Sicilian offered her hand, and he placed the ring on her finger, sealing the moment with their first kiss as a couple. The following day, Shin taught his entire group to fly. He cast anti-gravity magic on them and instructed them to use their wind magic to control their movements. He had also invented a loudspeaker and connected it to the primitive telephone he had created earlier, using it to call the rest of his friends down for the second wave of airborne training. Meanwhile, in the Blesha Empire, Chatrum and his demon army methodically destroyed every town and village. He received updates from his distrusted lieutenants, Zest and Mia. Mia reflected on how Zest's demon squad had targeted merchant groups, causing food shortages and driving prices up. While the nobles continued to live in luxury, the common people starved, and Shrum exploited their resentment to turn many into demons. These newly transformed demons then massacred the nobility and razed nearby towns, leaving the empire in ruins. Mia disagreed with some of Shin's methods, though she understood his hatred for the nobles. She disapproved of the high loss of life among commoners. Soon after, Shin convened a meeting of all the demons under his command. He thanked them for laying waste to the Blesha Empire, and the demons rejoiced. However, Shin stated that his ultimate goal had been to overthrow the empire and that, now that it was accomplished, he had nothing further to pursue. The demons were displeased with this declaration and insisted that they continue conquering neighboring kingdoms and ultimately dominate the world. Shin told the gathered demons that they were free to pursue their own ambitions, though he personally did not share their goals. One demon decided to leave on his own, and Shin assured him that he was completely free to do so. He even encouraged any other demons with ambitions to depart if they wished. After many demons had left, Nuria asked Shin why he harbored such intense hatred for the empire, noting that she had heard he had once been an imperial duke himself. Shin realized that he had never shared his life story with them and decided that this was the appropriate moment to do so. He explained that his story began 2 years prior, when he had still been a normal human. Though he was a duke, he often mingled with the common people and helped them with farming and other daily matters. Under his visionary policies, his territory prospered, and his wife was soon expecting their first child. However, Shin's lenient policies toward commoners had earned him numerous enemies, including the man who would later become emperor of the Blesha Empire. The nobles were displeased with Shin's growing wealth and influence, and the future emperor devised a plan. He persuaded the nobles to summon Shin to the capital and keep him there as long as possible, using that time to orchestrate his downfall. Shortly afterward, Shin received a letter from other nobles expressing interest in adopting his lenient policies. He was overjoyed and decided to attend the meeting discussing the proposals. His wife, however, was worried because she knew that some nobles were envious of her husband. Shin reassured her, confident in his abilities as one of the best magicians in the empire. A few days after Shin had left his territory, people began disappearing mysteriously, and the nobles spread rumors claiming that he had kidnapped them and was selling them as slaves. The public gradually came to believe these lies, painting Shin as a villain. Weeks later, the nobles staged a fake kidnapping. They presented kidnapped girls in a wagon that appeared to belong to Shin, showing the evidence to the townspeople. This enraged the population, who decided to take matters into their own hands. They set fire to Shin's mansion, where his pregnant wife was still inside. When Shin returned to his territory and saw the burning house, he was devastated. Heartbroken at the sight of his dead wife, he demanded to know why the townspeople had committed such a cruel act. They blamed him for kidnapping and selling people as slaves, claiming that the imperial police had shown them undeniable proof. It was at that moment that Shin realized the nobles had plotted against him to destroy him. Overcome with grief and rage, he cursed the people who repaid his kindness with betrayal and the empire that allowed Val nobles to act freely in his territory. Shin had been consumed by grief and rage, and dark energy began to swirl around him. He declared that he would destroy the people and the empire, and then he transformed into a demon. The mere act of his transformation released enough energy to annihilate his entire town. At the scene of the destruction, Shrim laughed and swore that he would obliterate the Blestia Empire, from the emperor down to the last commoner. After hearing his story, Zest remarked that, since their master had already achieved his goal of destroying the empire, he now needed a new challenge. He instructed his assistant to attack a small kingdom near Earlshide, reasoning that this would force Shin to intervene and engage them in battle. Meanwhile, in the capital of Earlshide, Prince August's coronation ceremony was underway when a messenger suddenly arrived with news that demons had been sighted near the border. The public panicked upon hearing this, but August quickly urged calm, explaining that a special unit was in place and fully capable of neutralizing the threat. He then called Shin to join him on stage and introduced him to the public as the hero who had thwarted a demon attack at the Magic Academy. August praised Shin and the group for their growing strength, then removed his cloak to reveal the battle uniform he was wearing beneath it. He asked Shin to address the public with a demonstration that would reassure them, and also requested that he come up with a striking name for their group. While delivering the first part of the request was easy for Shin, he struggled to devise a name. Eventually, he declared that they were the Ultimate Magicians, a title that many found cringeworthy. Nonetheless, Shin cast the floating spell on everyone, and the group flew toward the border to confront the demons. At that time, in the small neighboring kingdom, the Knight Commander and his soldiers observed a horde of demons approaching. Recognizing that their forces were insufficient to face the threat, he realized their country was in grave danger. Even if reinforcements from Earlshide were requested, it would take a week for them to arrive. He ordered all available magicians to use magic barriers to defend the castle walls, and their special defensive gear successfully blocked the first wave of demon attacks. Meanwhile, Shin and his group were flying toward the kingdom, with Shin still cringing over the name, Ultimate Magicians, aware that it was too late to change it. August teased him about it, but Lin genuinely insisted that it was a good name. Maria had flown up to Shin and admitted that she was nervous about fighting a demon. Shin reassured her, telling her to cheer up because she was stronger than any demon. He then instructed Sicilian to stay behind and care for the injured rather than join the battle. As for the others, Shin ordered them to form pairs and take down demons individually. Soon, the kingdom came into view, and it was clear that it was already under siege. The demons bombarded the town with attacks, toying with civilians who were desperately fleeing. When a pair of demons was about to kill a woman and her daughter, Shin intervened, drop-kicking one of them in the face and sending it flying. The demon's partner, enraged at Shin's audacity, mocked him, claiming that a mere human could not hope to confront them. It drew its weapon and began channeling its magic, only to freeze in terror when it saw Shin charging his blue flame cannon. With a single shot, Shin annihilated the demon, while Thor quickly dispatched its partner. Afterward, they helped the mother and daughter to their feet and directed them toward the rescue center. Shin looked around in fury, witnessing the widespread death and destruction. Then he spotted August and Maria atop a high tower. August addressed the people, announcing that reinforcements from the kingdom of Earlshide had arrived to protect them from the demons. He called out to the demons, warning them to surrender quietly because they faced Shin, the new hero famed for defeating demons single-handedly. The civilians cheered at this news, but the demons, instead of retreating, grew even more eager to fight. The group spread out across the city in pairs. Shin instructed Sicilian to remain at the rescue center and tend to the injured, and she reminded him to stay careful. Neither of them noticed Zest's assistant lurking nearby, eager to test Shin's abilities. Meanwhile, Alice and Lin teamed up and located their first target using the search spell. They encountered a demon that had already hunted a group of knights with ease. The demon mocked them, calling them flatter than a surfboard and asking if they were there to play with Barbie dolls. Infuriated, Alice advanced while activating her flame magic, but Lin quickly doused her flames with a water spell and reminded her that now was not the time to be carried away by emotions. They were facing a deadly demon. Alice calmed herself and prepared to fight more strategically, only to realize that the demon was already dead. Lin had struck it with a high-pressure water attack while Alice had been distracted, ending its life instantly. Suddenly, they heard the scream of a knight being tortured by another demon. The demon taunted the knight before unleashing a destructive attack toward him. Lin and Alice arrived just in time to block a demon's destructive attack with their magic barriers. This demon mocked Alice, calling her flatter than an iPhone screen, which caused her to snap. She unleashed a powerful fire spell that completely obliterated the demon, leaving not even ashes behind. Afterward, they helped the injured knight to his feet, but he insisted that he was still capable of walking back to the rescue center on his own. Encouraged by their success, the two girls decided to compete to see who could defeat the most demons. Elsewhere, Julius blocked a demon attempting to engage Thor in close combat. When a second demon launched an attack at them, Thor defended with his barrier while simultaneously releasing a wind blade to inflict a deep wound. He asked the demon if they were acting under Shrimp's orders, but it refused to answer and attacked again. Thor countered with multiple wind blade slashes, forcing the demon to its knees. The demon explained that it and its kind sought to destroy everything because, as demons, their instinct was to wreak havoc. It further revealed that their hatred for the nobility, coupled with oppression, had fueled their transformation into demons and intensified their desire for destruction. Before the demon could continue fighting, Thor and Julius defeated it and its partner swiftly. In another location, two demons had cornered several knights against a wall when a magic circle appeared beneath one of them, freezing it instantly. Its partner soon discovered Yuri perched on a rooftop. Just as the demon prepared to attack her, Tony intervened, using his ultrasonic blade to cut both demons down in a single strike. Meanwhile, another group of demons had located the rescue center and moved to cause havoc. Mark was standing guard, nervously holding his sword to confront the approaching threat. One demon charged at him, only to be crushed by a falling concrete block. Olivia declared that she would protect her boyfriend, but the second demon attacked her and was instantly incinerated by Mark, who vowed to keep his girlfriend safe. The first demon attempted to rise, cursing them, but they coordinated a combo attack and defeated it immediately. Inside the rescue center, Sicilian struggled to heal the ever-increasing number of injured civilians. Meanwhile, Shin continued to dominate the battlefield, annihilating countless demons with each spell. Despite being attacked from all directions, he utilized a variety of techniques to eliminate them completely. Zest's assistant and spy observed Shin throughout the battle, sweating profusely as he realized that Shin was far stronger than he had ever imagined. Zest had initially come to assess Shin's weakness, but as he observed him in battle, he realized that Shin was a nearly flawless combatant, seemingly without any weak points. In another location, August and Maria had successfully cleared all nearby demons. When the leader of the demons appeared to confront them, it assumed that the prince was the head of the group and aimed to kill him to intimidate the others. August laughed at the misunderstanding, introducing their group as the ultimate magicians and clarified that he was not the leader. Nevertheless, he acknowledged that taking out the demon leader would demoralize the rest, and he was determined to defeat the enemy's leader. He challenged the demon to attack him first, but Maria launched a surprise strike. The demon immediately defended against her sneak attack, using two humans as shields before tossing them toward the group. Maria attempted to dodge but was struck by a powerful punch. Her special defensive armor absorbed most of the impact, otherwise, she would have suffered multiple fractures. The demon then grabbed her arm and slammed her against a wall, yet she remained unharmed. She infused her magic into the uniform, causing her injuries to begin healing instantly. Observing this, the demon realized that areas not protected by her armor remained vulnerable. Maria acknowledged this, but asserted that it was pointless and unleashed a series of fireballs, generating a massive explosion. She continued her relentless assault, but when the smoke cleared, the demon remained unharmed. He had deployed a special defensive tool he had acquired after defeating magicians from the kingdom earlier. Both August and Maria recognized the strength of this tool, and the demon taunted them to continue attacking. The two exchanged a glance and immediately moved in opposite directions to flank him. August struck with lightning magic, which the demon easily blocked using the tool, while Maria attacked from the other side. Though the demon skillfully defended against their coordinated assaults, he began to lose confidence as his opponents showed no signs of fatigue. Eventually, a lapse in his concentration caused his barrier to weaken. It shattered under Maria's fireball, leaving him vulnerable to the attack. After the demon recovered from Maria's fireball, August struck him with a lightning spell, creating a perfectly circular hole in his chest. The demon died instantly, and August and Maria continued their mission. Zest's assistant was stunned, realizing that not only Shin but his entire team was powerful enough to defeat demons. He wondered how they could possibly handle Shin himself. Even Zest and Miria, who were observing from outside the castle, concluded that Shin was far too strong for ordinary demons to challenge. They agreed that sacrificing more troops would be unwise, but extracting themselves would not be easy. Mia volunteered to distract the magicians and give the demons a chance to escape. She melted and blasted the heavy door protecting the city, causing massive explosions throughout the area. Miria easily overwhelmed the knights and was on the verge of annihilating their commander when Lin and Alice arrived. They blocked Mia's attack with their magic barriers and instructed the knight commander to retreat, explaining that he would only hinder them. Miria halted her assault and asked the girls who they were. Striking a dramatic pose, they declared themselves the ultimate magicians. Lin immediately attacked Miria with lightning magic, but Miria's speed allowed her to dodge effortlessly. Alice then launched a fire attack, which Miria blocked with her magic barrier. Alice attempted another fire spell, but Miria evaded it and counterattacked from behind. Alice managed to escape with minimal damage and used her uniform to heal herself. Miria was momentarily surprised by the power of the uniform, but Alice struck again. Miria deflected the attack and, as Alice tried to defend, slid beneath her to knock her down. When Lin attempted to intervene, Miria used Alice as a shield. Meanwhile, Zest's assistant received word that the boss demon had arrived and ordered all demons to retreat, but they refused. Suddenly, Shin appeared and incinerated one demon with his blue flame, terrifying the others and forcing them to flee. He continued attacking the demons as they scrambled across rooftops. Using his floating magic, Shin pursued them and unleashed his pinpoint devastating attack, annihilating the remaining demons. Shin swung his devastating beam to annihilate all the demons escaping over the walls, but he had to stop as the attack neared some knights. In the distance, he noticed massive explosions. Mia was engaged in combat with Lin, and by holding Alice hostage, she easily gained the upper hand. Yuri and Tony arrived to back up their friends. Yuri attacked Miria from behind, but Miria flung Alice directly into the attack. Alice managed to protect herself partially with her barrier, yet she collided headfirst with Yuri, knocking both of them out. Tony attempted to cover them using his ultrasonic blade, but Mia dodged his strike, disarmed him, shattered his barrier, and slammed him against a wall with a devastating attack. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck near Mia, forcing her to dodge while she trapped Lin between rocks, taking her down. Alice recovered and launched her magic against Mia, but when Miria redirected her attack toward Tony, Alice rushed to defend him. She used her barrier to deflect Miria's assault, but was knocked unconscious when a stone struck her stomach. Only Yuri remained, trembling in fear as Miria approached. At that moment, Shin arrived and commanded Miria to stop. She complied and waited as he freed Lin and healed her. Furious at the state of his friends, Shin instructed Yuri to tend to them. Curious about Shin's strength, Miria charged at him. He countered with his ultrasonic blade, but she easily dodged and trapped him in a stone prison. Shin cut through it only to face her next attack, which he blocked with his barrier, causing a massive explosion. He then counterattacked, and Mia narrowly avoided a slash from his blade. At that moment, August and the others arrived to support Shin, and Mia recognized her chance to escape. She fled, violently shoving Maria to the ground on her way. Shin pursued her using his jet boots, but Zest's assistant blocked his path with an ice wall. The assistant instructed Mia to attack the magicians while they were surrounded. She ascended into the sky, gathering an enormous amount of magical energy. Shin, observing his friends barely holding their ground, realized the attack could kill them all. He urgently ordered August to protect the others just as Miria unleashed her destructive assault. Everyone struggled to defend themselves while Shin summoned all his power to form a massive barrier, pushing the explosion upward. When the smoke cleared, the demons were gone, and, fortunately, all his friends remained unharmed. The team regrouped and concluded that the female demon must have been a highly skilled magician, judging by her strength. August expressed confusion over the motive behind the attack and wondered aloud what Shrum might be planning. Shin remarked that it was fortunate he had not been directly involved in the confrontation, otherwise, the outcome could have been far more disastrous. August instructed everyone to rescue the civilians and keep an eye out for demons, while advising caution this time. Shin and August proceeded to the rescue center and found the situation more serious than expected. Apart from Sicilian, Mark and Olivia were occupied treating the injured. They reported that the number of casualties was overwhelming and that Sicilian was prioritizing the most critical patients. August decided to call everyone in to help with the treatments and asked Shin to support his girlfriend. Inside, Sicilian was reaching the limit of her magical energy, but continued to push forward, trying to save as many lives as possible. Eventually, her magic ran out, and she had to halt treatment on one of the most severely injured patients. Overcome with frustration, she cried that she could do nothing for him. Desperately, she began to remove her clothes, explaining that they were imbued with auto-healing magic and could potentially save the patient if used as a dressing. Shin arrived just in time and covered her with his coat, reassuring her that the patient's wounds were too severe to be healed by the uniform or her alone, but that he could still save him. Using a tremendous amount of magical energy, Shin began healing the man, one organ at a time. He was deeply impressed that Sicilian had kept the patient alive for so long despite the severity of his injuries. Within a short time, The man was out of danger, and his wife expressed her gratitude toward Shin. Sicilian, however, was consumed by an inferiority complex. As they left the room, she clutched Shin's uniform, tearfully admitting that she could never match his abilities and felt useless, always reliant on him. Shin reassured her that it was not true, pointing out that she had been the reason the man had survived. He reminded her that she was not alone. Many of the people she had saved were there, and they thanked her, calling her a saint. Later, the ultimate magicians met King Swede, who thanked them for saving his kingdom. August expressed unease over the incident, explaining that he did not understand why Shrum would attack such a small nation after already destroying the empire. He emphasized to the king that Shin had fought Shrum before and had driven him away, demonstrating the team's formidable power. August expressed his desire to form an alliance with King Swede, who agreed to support Earlshide in the future. Following this, the group assembled together, and Shin reflected that they needed to remain prepared for another demon attack at any moment. August shared the same thought, and they collectively vowed to protect the world together. Soon after, they returned to the capital of Earlshide using the gate, where a party of knights and magicians awaited them. A celebration was held to honor the ultimate magicians for driving away the demons, though Shin groaned at hearing the cringeworthy name he had come up with. More people were expected to arrive later to congratulate them on their achievement. August reported the developments to his father, explaining the alliance with King Swede. He requested permission to reach out to other nations to invite them to join the alliance as well. The king granted him authorization to act as his ambassador, and Shin received his grandparents' approval to accompany August on the journey. May and Ellie declared their intention to join them too. Though August initially opposed the idea, his father allowed it. The following day, the ultimate magicians set off on their journey to protect the world from the looming threat of demons. Make sure to like and subscribe.